Hello everyone. Okay. So, yeah, like what Alex said, I'm here to talk to you about things they don't teach you when you're starting out in UX. So, hello. I was already introduced, but let me also do this on my own. So, yes, I'm Señires. I'm a UX designer and front-end web developer. Currently, the lead product designer at Signal TV. And other aside from my day job, I also volunteer in various tech communities like UXPH, which is one of the biggest groups, design communities here in the Philippines that's advocating for increasing knowledge and understanding of what UX is, and in the hopes of elevating the design community here in our country. So I'm the marketing lead there currently, and I'm also a Figma community advocate for Friends of Figma Philippines. You can join there if you want to get some tips on how to use the Figma, the design tool, which is similar to like if you have experience with Photoshop or with Sketch, maybe, or Adobe XD. It's just like that, except this one is generally browser based, and it's also um, where you can collaborate with a lot of people. So, isipin mo parang Google Docs, pero design too. So, parang ganun. That's how I usually try to explain what Figma is to people who are not familiar with it. And I also started a server, as mentioned, a Discord server called Tabayan 404 with some of my friends because we felt like we have already a lot of communities, tech communities in the Philippines, in the country, but we seem there's no place yet for developers, designers, tech enthusiasts, tech people to just chill and just to get to know each other as people. So that's why we made this community. It's just like a very chill place. Normally, people go here and they ask, "Oh, what's your recommended nito ganyan?" So usually mapapabili ka, mabubudol ka if you're like part of the community. But anyway, yeah, that's where you can also get some recommendations and stuff. And also, I love riding my road bike. So, I'm a casual uh, cyclist, as you can see. But despite my attire, hindi ko pa nararating yung mga malalayong places in the Philippines. But I eventually want to. But yeah, I just like riding my bike literally anywhere. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I've actually formally introduced myself. Let's go into the talk. I'll be sharing some things that I learned that they don't teach you when you're starting out in UX. And maybe you'd be thinking to yourself, and though that I'm aware that this is a career fair, you people sign up for the talks that you want to attend. This question might still be in your minds. What's with UX anyway? Why do we need to know more about it and understand it better? And what use do I have for it if I'm not considering or like I'm not going into a UX career? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're just interested in what UX has and that's why you're here in this talk. So here are some pointers. Um, yeah, so it's good knowledge to have, especially when working on different products and services, because UX is not solely tied to designers having the knowledge. Even developers, managers, or other fields can benefit from involving UX in their processes, and I'll expound on that later in my talk. It can also be a new career. So we're in a career fair and or career fiesta pala. That's the proper term. And in Workbean, baka mamaya you'll see all of the different designers, UX designer, UX research, or other UX roles that maybe you can try out, like emerging roles there. So maybe that's something you can go into. There are also lots of career shifters in the UX field, in the UX industry, and they're equipped with with their knowledge from their previous fields, and it helps them become more unique individuals within the community, and it also helps the industry grow and mature. So now, to get everyone on the same page, let's define what UX is for the benefit of those who might still be confused on what it means. Okay. Wait, you can still see just the screen, right? Yeah, okay. Well, just to double check, I put something kasi on top. Okay, anyway. Let me know if something is in front. Yeah. Anyway, continuing back, here is a description from Smashing Magazine, which is like a known front end. Oh my God, we are seeing my notes. Okay, never mind. Because I'm facing I'm facing the camera here. Okay, sige, never mind. Nakakahiya naman yun. Anyway, okay, going back. So, according to Slashing Mag, UX is how a person feels when interfacing with a system. So, this statement sheds light on two things. It's the interface that the user is interacting with, and the user's thoughts and emotions. This can more or less encapsulate what UX generally is and what designers need to work on. So, that's one thing that you need to think about while we're talking about UX. Another definition from Interaction Design Foundation is it's the biggest school, by the way, online design school since 2002. It defines UX, or they define UX, as the process to create products that provide meaningful and relevant experiences to users. So, coming from the previous point, as UX reminds designers to take note of the experiences that people have with the products and services that they design, we also need to strive to give meaningful and relevant experiences. So it reminds designers to put the needs of the user first when building a product or service. So you can already see there's sort of like a pattern here, and it can be shown as well here in the next definition of Nielsen Norman Group. So it's founded by pioneers of user experience like ano yung pangalan niya? But yeah, Nielsen Norman. Those are the yung apelido nila. So you can search more of it. Like go to nngroup.com, I think. So this is what they have to say about UX. User experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its product. So it's really not like it's really just everything. This means it's not just what's seen, but it's also what happens in between. And all of these are essential to consider when dealing with UX. And the goals of UX designers are always to provide users with delightful experiences that help them get to what they need to do. Okay, so now we've talked about what UX is. What about what UX is not? So I'll use this opportunity to address some common misconceptions on UX. Okay, so first of all, and you might have heard this already from before, but I'll just expound it a bit further. UX is not UI, or user experience design is not equal to user interface design. Even if it's already in the name, a lot of people still mix the two up because we've come to associate good UX with good visuals, with good visual design. Which in reality, it's just good UI design, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good UX design. So, designing user interfaces is simply a part of the whole user experience design process, but it doesn't start or end there. So, it's not like two different fields that don't really relate with one another. It's not even like, okay, they're sort of like friends. Or it's not even like nagsasapawan sila like a Venn diagram. But it's ideally, UI is within the UX ball, the UX sphere, or the umbrella term. UX is the umbrella term. UI is just one of those components that makes it, that enriches the experience and makes it better. But it doesn't encompass all of it. So here's one statement from a web programmer online named Dane Miller. And he said, UI is the saddle, the stirrups, and the reins. UX is the feeling of being able to ride the horse. So, what he's saying is, for if we would relate, so this is like I just stole this from the internet. This is someone who's riding a horse, I think in Baguio City, or I don't know. But you can see here that he's relating UI to the horse's reins, the stirrups, or what you're using to be able to control the horse, to be able to ride them. And UX is the actual experience of riding it. So, in this example, you get to see how UI sort of enriches the actual experience or the UX of riding a horse in a way. It's a crude definition, but please bear with me. Because what I'm just saying here is that normally you can ride a horse. Like, you don't necessarily need all of the accessories just to be able to ride the horse, but it would be very difficult. So UI is there, or the saddles, the horses, the reins, yung saddle, yung everything else that makes it comfortable for the user, for the human, or rather the person that's riding the horse, to be easier to ride. That's what enriches the whole experience, and you can actually enjoy with your horse going around, running around, or galloping around at least. And so that's one way to think about it. Next one is, what is not UX? UX is not just visual design or looking good. So again, it's not just the visual design. It can be a part of it though. So like I was been saying earlier, yun nga, it's not just the whole thing. Here, research is very important to consider when going into UX because you need to know what you're solving first before you actually get into designing. In fact, designing the visual aspects and usual design processes is just a part of the whole thing. It's not all. Here are some examples from Interaction Design Foundation for different things that you can do in research. You see that there's the usual qualitative interviews of found smack in the middle. And there's also mention of usability studies where you get a bunch of testers to do a bunch of tasks on your apps, on your products and services. So that might be something that you're more familiar with if ever. It's what like you go to your friend, you go to some random stranger, you have your prototype or your design and go like, hey, can you try this for whatever? Like, can you do me a favor and try this and say and tell me if it makes sense? So that's like the simplest way that you can do research actually. It's just to ask for feedback from other people. Not just like don't just isolate yourself. Um yeah. So there's more to UX research than this diagram shows us. But these are just some of the things that you can like get into once you're going into that field. Okay. And lastly, UX is also not designing for oneself. So, like I was saying, it's something you ask other people because it's important to remember you are not your user, period. Because you know your product too well already. Your users don't. This is what you need to remember when you're doing design, when you're working on the products and services that you're making, which is meant for other people. There are countless people who are too busy living their lives to even wonder about what else is in your product. They just want to get from A to B. They just want to get it over with. Do whatever they need on your app. It doesn't have to be your app, but it just so happens that they got a hold of it somewhere. It doesn't have to be Facebook, it doesn't have to be Twitter, but just for the meantime in our current situation now, that's what we're using. It doesn't have to be Zoom. It doesn't have to be what I'm using now is Google Slides. I could have used PowerPoint. I could have used something else. But you can see that certain people have certain preferences and you have to make sure that you get a hold of these people who are actually giving you a chance, I guess, to try out your product. And this is where you need to think about investing in UX research because it saves you time and money. You don't have to keep doing trial and error all the time for the things that you may or may not, you may think that are good for the people that are using your product. Um, yeah. So at least you don't have to build it for you to be able to test it. You can already just do some initial research and then say, oh, maybe this will work. Do you think it would work? Maybe like checking everything if yeah if you just want to get an idea on what might solve it. But of course, there's always asking after it's set up. But at least you didn't go through all of the plans. Okay, anyway. So here we have some ideas now on what UX is and what UX isn't. We'll now try to take a look on what the reality is like in the lives of UX designers and what some of the common challenges are and how one might get through it. Okay, you'd think all of the challenges that I'll be talking about here will be related to the actual work done by UX designers. But no, it's actually about everything else. And what do I mean? Technically, designing in itself is relatively easy compared to everything else that you have to do in the workplace. And this might sound surprising at first because oh, designing is really hard because I'm not good in drawing. I'm not good in um, like putting things together. Like I don't know visual design. What do you mean? Maybe that's what you're asking. So here are some of the things that maybe you'd be facing or what designers rather are facing and what I've done or what I've gotten advice to help face those challenges. Okay, so first, one common challenge is how best to present your ideas. So now I'm not saying that I've already cracked the code. because it might be very obvious that I haven't really cracked the code on this. I don't know how to present perfect presentations yet, and I'm still working on it. But so far, these three things have been the best advice given to me so far, and I've been applying them ever since. So first, you identify what your objective is of your presentation. What do you want the people attending your presentation to know once you finish sharing your ideas? Knowing this helps guide you while you work on the second tip, which is to set a clear outline. Every time I need to do a talk, just like this, it helps me 100% of the time to, if I write an outline of my talk before I go into slide making. So I'll show that in a bit. It's gonna be one of my examples later. And lastly, presentations are not like essays with word counts that you have to pad with a lot of words for it to actually count. Brevity is key. And I might be violating that rule. Maybe I've been saying so many things over explaining some things, but that's a work in progress. That's why this is a common challenge that designers face, or maybe even if not a designer, just people in the workplace face, and UX designers, UX practitioners face. And you can just keep on practicing to be able to get to this point, to get to be able to articulate yourself better and summarize things properly, so you can keep it short and sweet. Okay, so here's one example. This is the notes, or this is the outline that I wrote for this talk. It's very long. I was sort of panicking. Like, I technically wrote what I would be saying because work got in the way, or like work was eating me up, and I just had to be able to think about, okay, now I just have to put it into slides. So now that's this talk, and it's important that you have your then first, you have your outline first, because it actually helped me in creating this talk. If I didn't have the outlines before, if I just simply jumped right into making the slides and something, I would be too distracted of picking the colors, of picking the fonts, what pictures I'm gonna use, and I might miss the point that I'm actually trying to convey. So that's one thing you can consider. Another thing is, before, there were, if I don't know, is this familiar to any of you? Are you all too young to understand what this is or where this is from? So this is what an old browser looks like before. There would be like super dami mga browsers. Sorry. Yeah, super dami ng mga toolbars na parang, oh my god, it's eating up the screen, and it's making you not be able to actually use the browser for what it's intended to, which is to go through all of the internet, like to surf the internet. Now, this is a sample of what my browser looks like, and generally that's Google Chrome. So now you see, everything is gone from the top, and it's now just a bookmark bar and bookmarks bar rather, and then everything else is found like in the middle, or just situated in places where it might make more sense, quote unquote. So you can see here that there's a lot of change already, and it's because probably, and we know naman that Google has the resources to be able to do this. They already have our data, so might as well like make use of it. Um, they're researching what's the best way for these people to be able to actually do what they need to do, which is go on our search engine, or go on our browser, search something, and then be able to to absorb of the all of the information, or just surf the web. So they ditched the damning toolbars fad of 2000s or something. I think that was 2000s, or maybe even before. And then now it's just dami na lang ng extensions. They still kept the way, they still kept making things to allow users to be able to customize their experience on their browsers. But now it's not, at least like right and smack in your face. Now it's a better experience because they've done research. They've researched about it. And you can relate this to UX kasi, yun nga, parang yung UX mo lang din yung presentation mo essentially. Okay. Another thing, another common challenge is getting buy-in. And yeah, this is something that everyone has to face, not just designers but practitioners. And this also doesn't just apply to like stakeholders or clients. It can also be with your bosses, your bosses, your teammates, the other departments that you work with. And honestly, for this challenge, the best tip I can give you is to really hone your communication skills. And the previous step actually helps with this because if you can present your ideas clearly, then you can get your point across and communicate effectively as a result. But outside the meeting room, one thing that you can do is if you need to get buy-in for a particular idea, say a process improvement, or a new feature to include in the next release, what you can do is to get a temperature check first with the people around you and see what their reaction is to your idea. Maybe they'll agree with you, maybe not, but at the very least, you asked for feedback and you got an idea on what people might ask, so you can anticipate that when it actually happens. Like, you're planning ahead in a way. It also helps to get your teammates or your boss to help you in advocating for what you want to do, or your idea. Because this is what I normally do, and it helps me, they even help me rather, in strategizing for how to bring it up when implemented, at least in the context of companies, corporations, which is great. In reality, though, this might reflect differently based on the culture of the company you're part in. So it's still a case to case basis, but whichever works, just go ask help. It's okay. So here I'll just say honestly say I haven't really honed this skill as much because I personally haven't had the need to actively sell something like directly like me, or parang kailangan ko i-convince yung mga tao around me na hey, we need this, we need to do this. Ang nangyayari is usually I bring up something and usually they agree with me. Medyo hindi pa ako nagkakaroon ng times na someone disagrees with me directly. Pero maybe eventually I'll get there kasi syempre I'm still 4 years lang working. I have a long way to go. And that may be the same for you. Maybe at the start, people will just keep agreeing with you. Maybe they'll just say, you'll bring up something and be like, oh, I think this would be better. And they'll go like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, go do your thing. Go use Figma. Go use these meeting notes for like to make it more organized. For example, when you're doing minutes of the meeting with your teammates, because that's actually what I did. I suggested that maybe we can use like parang itong document at basta may ginawa akong document. So, parang pinakita ko sa boss ko. Sabi niya, ayan, sige, gamitin natin to sa next meeting. Tapos, sabi niya, so, siya yung nag-bring up sa team instead of me kasi, parang in the bureaucracy of everything, seniority, whatever, it makes sense for the boss to be able to be the one to like say to their team na, oh, ito na muna yung gagamitin natin. And it's actually like the idea of chi. So, parang na-acknowledge pa ako. So, that's also something that can help. And I already really work on honing my communication skills with my teammates and especially with my boss. And it connects to the next common challenge, which is working with others. So, you already know that you're gonna be working with these people for like God knows how long. Maybe 6 months if you don't really plan on staying there so long. Maybe 1 year. Maybe you wanna get your feet wet, or maybe X number of years. Maybe you find yourself staying there. So to make the situation more bearable, or at least to help you rather to be able to stay there, you get to know the people that you work with, because at the very least, you get friends along the way. And at first, then at least you just did whatever you could. But it really helps to also get you yourself to be also comfortable within the space that you will be mostly be in. And though I understand that in this pandemic, most people are forced now to be working from home and be working remotely. So there's not really the benefit of being able to see these people like every day. Like you go into an office, you share the same space for 8 9 hours and then you go home. So that might be difficult, but something that you can do is just have weekly calls. Maybe not every day because that's also gonna be tiring. Like to have Zoom fatigue is very real. But maybe you can like talk to them about not work. Like just get to know them either online. Maybe you can hit them up with a chat with a private message, or maybe you can introduce that you guys have game nights like online. Ang dami namang mga games like online that you can play as a team and you don't have to install anything. You just need your browser. That could be something that you can spend time with. And then eventually, they could also warm up to you. And this could be something that benefits you as well. Because now they're open with you, and you're also a bit more loose or like open with them. So now you would have a better relationship with them, with your teammates and with your other people that you work with. The other tip here is you learn to be open and to adapt into the situations that you are put in. So everyone was forced to adapt in this pandemic by going remote, and working remotely. But this also applies to like other things, like for example, you have to meron kang gusto mo pagandahin yung design ng app nyo. So, this is from me. Maybe you haven't really designed an app yet, but in the cases that, kunyari, yun nga, you're a designer already, working in a company, and you wanna make, you wanna redesign the website, for example, or you wanna redesign the app that the company currently has, a product that it's out there. And then you propose this idea. Pero, so you need to get buy-in. Tapos, you need to be able to present it perfectly or something. Pero, they say na parang, no, sorry, wala tayong resources for that. Or, we don't have enough time to be able to do this. Or, whatever reason. Baka hindi lang talaga kaya ng devs nyo. Baka hindi lang, parang, alam mo yun, ang daming limitations, ang daming harang in the way, or like tatagal siya masyado, and it might not be worth it to like pursue further. Maybe ganun yung makikita. So, you need to learn how to adapt to these situations so that at least you can either accept it as, okay, I know that I cannot do this at the meantime, or you can use that to like mesh or like think around like how to go around the situation and adapt, and then be able to still push what you want to do or what you want done, and but it doesn't have to be this one way. You can like keep on trying again. And it also ties into the last item here in this slide, because it also helps to know the strengths and limitations of the people around you. Because yun nga, if you know already, if you have an idea on how certain people you work with like tick a bit, I mean, you don't have to be parang nire-research mo sila like I mean, hindi naman ganun siguro, medyo stalking vibes na yun. Pero, I mean, I'm not saying that. But just, get to know them. Tas eventually, you'd have an idea na parang, oh, this person knows how to articulate themselves better. This person, my other teammate, knows how to make very, very beautiful presentations. And it, like, gets the point across, like, clearly. Like, more clearly than I can ever, like, hope to imagine. Or, like, someone else can put designs or rather documents together as if it's like a ganun-ganun lang. So, yung mga ganun, like, know what they're good at. And then, lalo na if meron ka rin mga kakulangan sa'yo, like, maybe, yun nga, you don't know how to present, like, as better as other people, you can ask for their help. Either they do it for you, or you get tips from them, and then eventually you can practice it as well. On the other hand, for them naman, if you also see where they're, parang napapansin mo, kunyari, yung isang tao, medyo takot siya mag-bring up ng, parang may problema siya in his personal life, lalo na like pandemic, medyo mahirap din mag-raise ng mga concerns. Kasi, nasa isip mo, hala, baka mamaya, hassle to, or like isipin nila na ganyan. So baka mamaya your teammate is thinking like that, and then you ask them, oh, how are you doing? Tapos they're going like, actually ang hirap na pala dito ngayon. Tapos ikaw, medyo okay yung relationship mo with your boss, with your other teammates, you can help them bring it up. Parang kasi doon ka magaling kang tawag dito, ask ng questions, parang bring up an idea and be able to like bring it to the table. Like, medyo hindi ka nahihiya on that aspect. Like, medyo, kasi medyo ganun ako. At least, if there is like a concern within the team, I would be able to like bring it up at least to my boss privately. Kasi, syempre, minsan hindi siya nagme-make sense if within like a meeting. Pero, I know that if there's something wrong, and something can be done about it, I bring it up. Pero other people, I understand, may not be the same. So, that's something that you can also help out in doing. And in here, maybe let's take a step back. What if, kunyari kakasimula mo palang mag-work, and I also experienced this myself. Parang, you want to be a UX designer. Okay. Tapos, ngayon, you apply into the different companies. You use Workbeam, makakita ka ng role, UX designer. It's parang, sige, apply ako, tapos nakapasok ka. Okay. Now, mag-isa ka lang, ikaw lang yung kayang i-afford ng company nyo, or like startup. So I guess in the startup sense, medyo mas nag-make sense. Well, actually it also makes sense in companies kasi some companies don't know yet how to invest in UX. But anyway, that's why we're here. That's why UXPH is here. Charot. Joke lang. So, yun nga, going back, naisipin mo, oh, mag-isa lang ako. Mag-isa lang ako na designer. Paano yan? Um, Paano ako makaka-work with others if mag-isa lang ako? Pero, you forget, you might have a teammate, you might have a boss. Maybe, not even like, kasama mo within the, ano tawag dito? Parang yun, kasama mo sa department. You have other people working with you. I mean, they're not gonna hire you if ikaw lang. That technically, you're gonna be a co-founder, founding member of that startup. So, like in reality, usually ang nangyayari is, they hire a designer and they say na, okay, sige, you do all of the visual work kasi yun lang naman naiintindihan ng mga taong to. Pero, ano, ikaw, now, medyo nakasubo ka na, nakapasok ka na, isipin mo, okay, how do I work with others? You have people around you. You have your team, you have your friends in the workplace. So, remember that you're not just alone in doing this. And they don't have to be designers, for you to be able to work with them. They can just be the marketing person, or maybe yung customer service representative ninyo. Talk to them. Talk to the people around you. Maybe kahit yung executive assistant dun sa, kasi sorry, the context always in my head is very corporate kasi dun yung experience ko, but it may be different for in startups kasi alam ko in startups usually people wear many hats. So, you could also use that. Like, you have your marketing friend that's copywriting, that's also doing all of the publications. You have your other person that's doing the finances and the everything else. They're your friends, or they're the people that you can work with. So try to change that mindset that maybe you are the sole designer, but you can always advocate to be able to make sure that they all understand what design is and they see the importance as much as you do. And then eventually, maybe down the line, because that's more of a business decision then, and also like something that you need to get buy-in. Remember that other challenge, to get buy-in, to get another designer with you. That's actually what happened to me when I started working in corporate. I was the only designer in that company. I was replacing other people that already left, and lahat sila product managers. So product managers are like the people who, well, manage the products, but just essentially sila yung taga-isip na parang, okay, ito yung mga features na gusto kong gawin. Kakausapin nila yung developers, sabihin nila, sige, ito yung priorities ng business, gawin natin to. Pero syempre, how will they be able to present that better if wala silang visual aspect? So that's a very crude way to like just say na parang, okay, they need a designer, okay, kailangan mo gawan ng screens to. So that was my role. That doesn't really open me up for like a bunch of time, or that doesn't really open me up to have time to tawag dito, to be able to do research kasi I have to make all of these designs. So, ano gagawin ko? So now I just ask help from them. And then eventually, in the long run, what I did was I advocated, essentially, kinulit ko yung boss ko. Sir, or like, well, friend ko na siya. It's like, I just called him by his name. Kunyari, and like, sir, can you please give me another designer to work with? Kasi, ang dami kong trabaho, ang dami kong ginagawa, tapos nilista ko, parang pinakita ko, ito yung lahat ng workload ko, tapos wala na akong time to be able to do the other things that are in my job description. If I have this other designer, we could always split up the work, and we can both be able to do things. So, sabi niya, okay, sige, eventually. And then, come next year, I got to work with another person. So, I convinced my boss, I had to convince him to get me some buy-in with HR as well. And then eventually, I had to learn how to work with others. So, parang, yun na din. That's one example. That's one situation that you might find yourself in. Okay. Now, you know the different... Oh, why is this... yes, okay. Sorry, nakalimutan ko yung nilagay ko na slide. So now you know the different challenges UX designers face, and you might be thinking, what now? Okay. Here are some different career paths to consider. So this is a career fiesta. maybe you'd be interested to pursue UX further. So I'll just give you some ideas on what you may get into, what some emerging roles are, or what things you are doing within UX. So you can go the generalist route, and usually this is the person who knows a bit about many things. So parang jack of all trades, ganun. And it's actually a good way to start out and to get the hang of everything. Kasi nga, parang, alam mo yun, nagta-taste test ka ng maraming bagay. Like, may buffet sa harapan mo, tapos, kumukuha-kuha ka lang, ay, sige, kunin ko to. Ah, sige, kunin ko to. Tapos parang, masarap siya. Eto, hindi ko masyadong type. So, alam mo yun, like, tinitikman mo lahat ng mga possible outcomes, possible things that you can do. Pero, you now then makikita mo saan ka din magaling, tapos you just keep doing it. Like, you have to eat that food. Parang hindi ka pwede maging picky eater. So you have to eat that food, you have to do that thing even though you're not necessarily good at it or not necessarily something you like doing, but at the very least you still get experience in doing it. The other route is the specialist route, which is where you're really good in one field, and they usually apply the practices that they know, like they know very well, in many different projects. And currently, where I am now is in the generalist route. So what I've been explaining so far, mostly I'm responsible, like as kunyari in Signal, I'm currently the one that's making all of the prototypes, the product, or rather, the designs for the product, so yung mock-ups ng itsura na yun. Pero I also have to be the one to spearhead all research initiatives within the company. Kasi I'm the UX person. I'm the one that has the knowledge, supposedly. That's why they hired me. So parang ganun din yung possible na mangyari sa inyo. Kasi that's also so far what my experience has been before. Parang the reason why they hired you is because you kind of know what to do, how to do a bit of everything. And though that might go into questionable, like parang job practices na pinapagawa lahat sa isang tao. Pero kasi, technically in the UX field, medyo ganun yung kailangan mong gawin eh. Like, you don't have to be the one to essentially do everything. But you at least have knowledge on all of these things on how to do it. So, here is some samples. So, kunya yan, I'm a UX designer. And I also studied a bit of information architecture. So, information architecture is how you arrange information. How you architect information. So, how you arrange information in such a way that it makes sense. Visual design is what it is. Visual design, yung itsura, yung mga magagandang things na nakikita nyo sa Dribble, sa Behance. User research is what it is. So, you're researching, you're asking the right questions, you're doing interviews with people. Yun. So, that's also another thing that you can like hone for yourself, because eventually, while you're designing your visuals, you need to know if it actually makes sense, if it works. So you go to these people, hey, does it make sense? And while you're doing all of these you're designing all of these things, you might even have to be the one to supply the actual content. So you also need to know what are the right words to be able to like bring people in, like make sure that they understand what we're saying as kunyari in your product. So you can't use like highfalutin words to be able to like convey something. You need to use easy words. So that's where copywriting and editing goes in. And there's more. Ang dami-dami pa dyan. And you can, like what I said in the start, can also use your previous experiences to help you further your career as a generalist in the UX field. And then, if ever you really enjoy kunyari doing one thing or doing a bunch of things, maybe that's when you can, I can hear someone. Maybe that's when you can now go into a specialist route. So, some examples are like, you can be an interaction designer, UX writer, UX researcher, information architect, and more. It's like, these are the things that you normally see in other countries na parang meron talaga silang mga job roles na naghanap sila ng ganito. Naghanap sila ng mga tao na magaling sa research. Naghanap sila ng mga tao na magaling magsulat. Tapos kaya magsulat ng mga things that convince people to buy their shit. Sorry, oh my god, napamura ako. No, but, yeah, okay. Yeah, but yeah, alam mo yun, so, other times, they're looking for people who know how to animate things. So, Interaction design is also a different skill that not everyone would have kasi that requires you to have visual background a background in visual design and animating as well, or like knowing how to make things like look wow ganyan, like fade in fade out, hindi lang naman ganyan yan, meron yan ng mga pop, kunyari pag nag-like ka ng tweet sa Twitter, you see that the heart like grows. So that was designed by an interaction designer. Normally, you wouldn't really think twice about it, but then it makes you feel good. So that's like, alam mo yun, those are the little things that eventually the Philippines can eventually go into. But for now, a lot of people are going into the generalist route in the hopes of maybe some of them can go into specializing for certain things. Kasi you need to get your shoes wet first before you can actually like go further. Okay, so now, when we're talking about UX, people sometimes forget that designs being built, the designs they're building, don't stay in a bubble or in a black box. It always has to be in the context within the reality we live in. So, okay, I'll go off a bit tangent here and talk about cycling, which is something that I like. So, if ever you've seen, di ba, nagkaroon ng cycling boom dahil sa pandemic kasi there are no public transpo, yung kotse hindi din pinapalabas or like it's generally not considered safe. So eventually people have been advocating for having bike lanes on the roads. Pero now, you'll see that even if there are bike lanes, and I will quote unquote do that because I personally don't think they're still up to par. So there are bike lanes already that are just being literally painted on the streets. But that's not what we're asking. We're asking, or rather, everyone is asking to get better infrastructure in our roads that considers actual people and not just people in cars. We want things that protect all kinds of people and not just the able-bodied people na para makakapag-bike din sila kahit kakasimula pa lang nila sa pag-learn ng bike and they can still safely go to where they wanna go. So we want protected bike lanes. But so far, right now, the government is not really implementing that as well, or they would implement it tapos tatanggalin nila. So that's also something that you can consider in UX. Parang makikita ninyo they're doing these like pinapaint lang nila yung mga lines on the road and say that they're bike lanes kasi nasa isip nila like binabubble nila yung thoughts nila like as a person, like it's a road and it's the road that has worked on for so long tapos gusto lang namin dagdagan, lagyan ko lang yan ng painting. Tapos yun na, may lane na. Kasi that's how we normally do it for cars. We just paint one line and then it's a road. Or like it's a lane in the road. Pero they don't know the context of cyclists, the people who actually ride. You're very exposed when you're riding in a bike. And a car that just kind of ganyan lang sa'yo, tumabi sa'yo, can kill you. Even if you're wearing a helmet, even if you're not wearing a helmet, even if you're super duper healthy, alam mo yun, like, so many things can happen. And they fail to consider this. They fail to see the context of like actually riding on the road, riding next to cars, riding next to motorized vehicles. So that's something that they need to be able to consider, and that's where UX can come in and help. And hopefully, we have our advocates, our transport advocates, and like cycling advocates out there. They're calling for these things to be done. They're trying to get buy-in, and so far it's sort of working. I think the OTR will be able to work on this, but then that's like a big example on what I mean here in this slide. Another thing is UX is rarely done alone, even if you're the only designer. So like what I was saying earlier, UX is a team effort. It's not just because you're the only designer there. That doesn't mean that you cannot do it with others. So remember that you always have people around you to work with. No man is an island, sinasabi nga nila. So try to get help. It's okay to ask for help for the people around you, and also know that other people can ask for your help and it's fine. Tulong-tulungan lang tayo. It's how societies are made. It's how communities are made. So UX is everywhere, as I can see in the chat as well. Sinasabi dito. And also, UX is something that can enrich you as a person and as a professional. It helps you become a better person, so long as you put into heart the practices and processes of UX. And ideally, people understand this when they go into the field, but not everyone who goes into the field really understands it as much. And I just really hope that they just need a reminder to know that in UX, what you consider here is you have to empathize with the people that you're building these products for. you're also being selfless because you're putting the needs of others parang instead of yours. Parang, yun nga, iniisip mo, ano ba yung kailangan nilang mangyari? Ano ba yung kailangan nilang gawin? Tapos hindi yung things that make sense to you. You're trying to go into their shoes. You're trying to see what they see. You're trying to see how it would look like in their lives. Para you can have an understanding na, I'm not experiencing that, but other people are. And it's very valid as well. So, you apply the learnings that you've gotten into the designs that you're making. And then eventually, maybe you'd get some feedback. Oh, this actually helped me. I actually understood it. I was actually considered. Parang now you give these people a chance to be able to use the products that you design and they be able to do what they need to do. It might be a thankless job, but at the very least, you're helping people. So that's how you can apply UX even beyond the workplace, even beyond the products that you use. You can apply it in your life. Okay, so thanks. So that's it for my talk. So if you wanna connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, my handle is Señires. It's on the screen. If you wanna join UXPH or Friends of Figma Philippines, they're on Facebook. There we have Facebook groups there. Just search the name. If you wanna join Tambayan 404, just go to discord.gg/tambayan404. So there. Okay. Any questions? Go ahead.
If you have questions, please put them in the chat box below and we'll get to that. Thank you for such an insightful and UX design, Chi. Everyone, let's give a virtual round of applause. I know I learned a ton from Chi. I've always been interested in UX design, but I've never had the opportunity to learn more about it. I hope you all learned something, because again, I certainly did. Figma sounds so interesting, and I definitely want to try it out because I've heard it from more than just you. And again, I really like how intersectional UX is, especially since it is everywhere. And thank you so much, Chi, for taking the time off your busy schedule to talk to our audience here at Workbean. I'm sure the audience, again, has some burning questions, which I see all in the chat. So let's jump to it. So how can one get started in UX?
Okay. So, sige. I'll also connect that with some of the questions that people are asking here sa chat. Like,
Okay, great.
do you need to be a developer to be a UX designer? Because that's technically like maybe the first thing you think. And ako, I started as a front-end developer, a web designer. So, yun. The short answer there is no. But if you're going, it depends eh. It depends on what you want to do. Technically, with the way things are now in the UX industry for tawag dito, when you're starting out as designers and they're looking for people who actually know how to design apps and websites, it helps talaga, like super duper helps talaga if you know how the platform works. So, if you know how things work when you're building a website or when you're designing an app, you know how apps work. You know what can be done and you know what cannot be done at the meantime, like the limits of the technology that's presented to you. Maybe, for example, maybe not in a visual sense, in something like conversation design. So, 'di ba, may mga Google Home tayo, may Siri, may Google Assistant. You go like, "Hey Google, blah 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 blah." Pero hindi naman nila maintindihan lahat 'yun eh. Kasi you can't talk to machines yet like as if you're having conversations with people. So, yeah, no. So you don't have to be a medyo nagtangent ako. But yeah, no, you don't have to be you don't have to be a developer if you want to get into other fields. But if it really just helps have an idea at least on how these platforms work. So you don't have to code, but you can code and it can be helpful as well. You can try it out. That's one thing that you can try out, like if you want to be a generalist. You can try out like simple tutorials online for like how to build a website, HTML, CSS, bit of JavaScript, code. Pero kung na-intimidate ka doon, just like ang tawag dito, try it out, read about it, learn about it. You can learn so much about something pero not actually do it. So maybe that's what you can do. And how else to get started in UX? Just do it. Just try to do it. Like think of the first thing that kunyari mag-start ka lang siguro ng personal project. if you just wanna do it yourself, like magsa-self-study ka and then you hone your skills. Kasi UX is also something that gets better with yourself as you practice. Kasi, yun nga, it's not like something na parang, okay, I've gone into a class, tas parang after that, I know UX na super duper, like the back of my hand. No, it's something that you always have to keep practicing. Even if you're already seasoned in the field, like ako, I'm still learning a lot of things about UX. I sometimes feel like I don't know everything there is to know about UX. Sometimes I feel like medyo imposter syndrome na yun. Pero it's also very valid na I haven't seen everything there is yet in the field. And there's more like coming along. And that's the beauty in it actually. Kasi even if you're just technically doing the same things over and over again, things, it may have different results. Parang it may work this time pero won't work the other time, and from there you can gather feedback, you can improve yourself, you can improve your craft. So yeah, so a tangible way to get started in UX is become an intern in one of the many companies. Maybe sa Workbean meron silang mga nag-accept ng interns. If not, just go around LinkedIn, mag-type ka lang UX design intern or UX intern. Attend all of these things, mga mga events like this, or attend or go into communities that may have like job postings. Just look for people or look for opportunities for you to at least get started. Like internship kasi is also a great way to be able to learn things kasi they will be forced to actually teach you things. Kasi nga, gi-intern ka, sabihin mo, anong alam mo sa design? Wala po, I want to learn. Parang dapat din yung hahanapin ninyo is someone or a company that's actually very open to accepting people like you so that they can teach you and then hone you in your skills. And then eventually, maybe if you get good at it within that company, maybe they'll promote you into an actual full-time employee. If not, at the very least, you learn something from them. Yeah, that's something that you can do. Either research online, look for articles, or get started by going into an intern. Going and becoming an intern. Yes.
Okay, going off of that question, a couple people have been asking about where to find mentors here in the Philippines. Do you have any experience with either mentoring or finding mentors?
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually a rookie mentor, if I were to say it like it. Kasi sa UXPH, that's actually one of the things that we're building up on. Maybe next year, like early next year, we'll be able to like launch it to other people. Right now, we're doing a bit of mentoring with some of the different partners that we have. Right now, I'm a mentor for Smart Sweep, I think. So yeah, so parang I have some mentoring skills, if ever I would say that. But honestly, if you just need like advice on different things for UX, you can just like message me on Twitter or send me a message on LinkedIn, connect with me there, and I'd be happy to like help you in whatever questions that you have there, or like with your career, like how you could get feedback from me in there, because maybe I'll gain a friend from you. Maybe you'll gain a friend in me. But anyway, we the very least we get connections, and I'm open naman to mentoring. And so far in UX, here in the Philippines, UXPH is one place that you can get mentors. Either you go in as a volunteer, and actually one of the volunteers is with me here in this event, si Din. So I'll just special mention you. Pero yeah, so she's part of, like, she's also a research lead naman sa UXPH. And yeah, we give mentorship to the people who volunteer for a UXPH. So if you're interested to like try it out and maybe do a bit of event management, or maybe do a bit of some research on UX for the Philippines, yeah, you can go to uxph.org/volunteers, yeah, or something, and you can send us an email, send us a message, and then we'll see what we can do.
Okay, great. Someone sent me a message asking if you could share some of your work.
Well, okay. So here is my website, but I'm still in the process. I'm gonna type it in the chat. But right now, it's just glorified business card. Because I'm still working on the design. So, kasi nga, I'm a front-end web developer. Medyo, I'm still fighting my ideas on like how to not um, just you just get it over with, just get the design out there. So that's where most of the links are, it can be found na do sa mga stuff that I've worked on. And so far, all of the other things that I've done are things that I cannot talk about kasi under NDA sila. Kasi nga, I work for corporation, so I really can't share them at the moment. So, ayun. But eventually, I'll find a way to like get some work out there. And there will be soon. Hindi pa lang siya nalo-launch. Pero eventually, lalabas yan. Okay, yun lang.
I'll just read the questions in order. So, what's the difference between a product design? Oh, sorry, I missed one. What makes a strong UX portfolio?
Usually, UX portfolios are built around case studies. So, case studies are just like how you would do research papers in school. Pero ito, um, you're essentially just showing your process as well. Parang how you designed it, or rather, first how you came about the situation. You're telling a story in the excuse, excuse me, case studies. Sorry, kakakain ko lang kasi. Okay. Pero, yeah, UX portfolios, good UX portfolios rather, are usually places where the designer can actually showcase their work really clearly and what they're good at, like really clearly. So usually that's in telling stories. Like it's very important for UX practitioners to be able, or UX designers for that matter, to be able to present the story, yun nga, clearly. So it's in presenting your ideas where you need to work on. And when case studies, you present the problem, and then you present what you did to like further identify what other problems are there, like the mini problems that come up in the big mother problem. And then you also show what the solution is that you took to help solve that problem, and what you did to improve on that solution. Kasi usually ganun yun eh. So if you've heard of design sprints, or design thinking sprints rather, yun yung parang merong 5 steps where you go find the problem, define the problem, um, further go down into the problem and ideate, and then you do the prototyping, and then you do testing. So that's something that you can use as a format when you're writing down your case studies for the different things you might be working on. So kunyari, if it's a website, you say, okay, bakit ko ba kinocode tong website na to? Para saan ba siya? Para saan ba yung pages na nilalagay ko dito? Why do I have an about page? Why do I have a login page? Why do I have so and so page? So yun yung mga questions. Actually, the most important question a UX designer should also have, or a UX practitioner should have, is also why. Why are things like this? Why can't things be better? Why is it like this? So, why? You just keep asking why up until you get to a certain point na parang, okay, it makes sense. Sige, let's do something about it. Yun. So, case studies.
Great. Lots of questions. What's the difference between a product designer and a UX designer? Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So, kaya ko lang siya din iniba kasi the label is different. And I think talaga may difference siya before. Rather, may difference talaga siya in the world of product design. Kasi parang product design involves end-to-end. Like, designing the end-to-end process of a product, a particular product. So, you're tied to one thing. UX designers, on the other hand, are more free-flowing. Parang, okay, this project needs UX help. And then after that, oh, there's another project you need help in. So, okay, that's also something that I did in my previous company. So, we had a bunch of products that we had. It's called True Money. So, I was in a fintech company. And we had a bunch of products that have differing parang points, or like rather differing use cases. So I can't keep applying the same thing that I did for product A in product B. It's gonna be different because their context is different, because their background is different, the platform, ang daming iba. So, UX designers, they thrive in the dami of the projects that they that they get themselves into. Product designers are usually tied to one thing. Usually, or like a bunch of things. So, kunyari, parang product area. Ito lang yung parang things that you design for. So, you sort of specialize in a particular field. So, kung kunyari, the products that you're working on are mostly transactional. So, kunyari ganon. Then you only work with apps that are very transactional in nature. Pero, if they put you in another product that would be about, kunyari sabihin na natin, something like social media networks. You don't know anything about that kasi we're very familiar with transactional experiences but not social media. So, that's when you become a UX designer. So, parang yun lang yung caveat doon. Product designers, you're just focused usually on one or a few things. UX designers get to get their hands dirty with a lot of other projects. Kasi, yun, mas maraming i-assign sa'yo. Yeah.
I know that we won't be able to get across like all the questions, but how do you think, like, do you have any recommendations for how to best shift into this industry if people have already been in other fields?
Yeah, okay. For that, yeah, one thing is you can join communities like UXPH or maybe like join a community with interests in the thing that you want to get into. Kasi at the very least, you can get an idea on what can be done there. And while in the process of being there, kunyari, in a UX community like UXPH, you can now see na parang, kunyari, background mo is marketing. You can see the connections, the similarities. Maybe sa UX community, magkaroon sila ng event. You talk about certain things that are very familiar to you. And you go like, I've been doing that na pala. So I can try to say na parang, okay, I've been doing this na pala like in my past experiences. Kunyari, copywriting or like researching, maybe giving pitches, like mga product pitches, I guess. But I personally haven't really given product pitches kasi all of the things that I've had to work on are things that are required by the company. But in the case of like startups, sometimes you'd have to be able to know how to sell your idea properly, like to convince people that are like, yeah, ito, parang, this is good because A, B, C. Parang, yan. Yeah, just start, go into a community, and maybe yun nga, either start into an internship, maybe go into a bunch of workshops as well, attend events so that maybe workshops, seminars, research on like what UX is, like just be, alam mo yun, magbasa ka lang on like certain things and just do it. Parang hanap ka, kunyari, kung within your company, if you're kunyari working already in a company, you could ask your boss, tell them, hey, I kind of want to go into I kind of want to try UX. So, what are the ways that I can do that? I can achieve that, or how can you help me in my career growth? Like, you ask your boss or your superior. And if your boss is like a very friendly boss and is for you and is for your career growth and not necessarily just for the company, then he'd be like, or they'd be like, yeah, sure, sige. But you'd have to remember, you have to do more work than usual kasi you'd be doing your normal work and then you'd be doing some UX work. So you have to be prepared for that as well. But if you really just want to try it out, maybe you can start small. So, yeah, just practice it kasi that's really the only way talaga na you can, well, maybe not really the only way. But that's really the, like, what I see is the best way for you to be able to do UX. Just get your hands dirty, just do it. Like Shia LaBeouf said, just do it.
Yeah, that's a great way to end the question section. And like I said in the chat, I'm sure that because we weren't able to make everyone's questions, I'm sure that you and your friends at UXPH would welcome all the questions that we missed. But again, thank you so much, Chi, and the rest of the Beanies for being such a great and participative audience.